And you try to explain that to Italians, how like copay and premiums and deductibles work, and you realize how insane it is. This is absolutely bonkers.
It's not necessarily cliches or stereotypes of Italy, but stereotypes of just not being in America. This idea that like outside of America, there's going to be, you're screwed if you have to go to the doctor. There's going to be
Socialism.
yeah,
It's
there's going to be,
all,
everything's dirty and there's not proper hygienic practices
yeah,
and stuff like that. That's totally nonsense.
yeah. It's all socialism, and nobody's an individual, and they can't go to the doctor if they have.
Or you go to the doctor, but it's going to be, you're not, you know, who knows what's going to happen. Even Italians themselves think that's true about themselves, about their own place. But like, you're like, dude, honestly, I've had pretty good experience at any time I had to go. There was a couple of times where I decided to go to a private practice because I didn't want to wait for the public. If you're in a hurry, it can be a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
But then if you go, so then you just pay a private doctor, like without waiting through the public health system.
Mhm.
And it's like €100.
Yeah, no, it's
And
still
like,
way less than what you'd pay out
like,
of
okay.
pocket in the States.
Oh man, it's way less than what you would pay after your deductible in the
Yeah.
States, before your deductible or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with that.
And I don't have to deal with that. It's like when you look
Well, it's a
back
deductible.
when you look back at the insurance system and how things work in the US, it's just I've forgotten how it's so confusing. And you try to explain that to Italians, how like copay and premiums and deductibles work, and you realize how insane it is. This is absolutely bonkers.
There's a lot of things you realize about America after being here for a while that you just realize is quite just not how we perceive it in America.
That's not how we perceive it, and then you see how much corporations have had such an influence on American society. One example, perfect example, is cars. Like, America used to be on the path to being set up for public transit. A lot of cities like Houston had the infrastructure and the planning and logistics set up to have like a train and a tram system. But then once Detroit blew up and it was all automotive, we were like, screw all this, we're making roads. It's all roads, parking lots and roads. So like the city of Houston was like basically rebuilt for cars, and that just mapped onto the rest of the US, where it's like, well, you know, we can't have trains in the US because it's all too far apart. It's like, well, not really. There are trains across Europe.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas that get just kind of, well, I think, yeah, it all comes to convincing. You get convinced when you live in a place for a long time, and it's the same with anywhere, but you just get convinced of different things, you know. But part of being from a country like America is you're just going to get convinced that everything in America is the best option. You know, as an Italian growing up, you're not taught that. I imagine Italians, they can tell me if this isn't true, but I think that like Italians growing up, they're taught that they have a lot to be proud of, but I don't think they're taught that everything in their country is the best version of whatever that thing is in the whole world. You know what I mean? They're taught that their food is the best. It's pretty hard to argue against that. It's pretty hard to argue against just the overall beauty of the country and everything and the people. But they're not taught that everything they do in this country is the best way. They're actually taught that there's a lot of things that are screwed up about it. In fact, they're very self-disparaging.
They're very cynical about their system. They love most parts about their culture, but they don't love the system.
They didn't, and you know, sometimes find myself speaking to Italians, but like, look, it's actually not as bad as you think. It's not like you go to America and everything is better. In fact, so many things in America make zero sense the way they're done. We're just used to, we don't want to change it because we just think, oh, well, this is the best. This is the way things are the best. This is the most free. This is the most promising way to do this. Yeah, okay, we have expensive healthcare, but it's the best. Yes, we have issues with gun violence, but we're the most free.
But we're the most free.
You know, it's just like, what if you look at other countries, like everything falls apart when you realize you're not the most free. You don't have the best healthcare. You don't you might want to, you can argue that. It's not just like obviously true. You grow up in America thinking like all this stuff is obviously the best. Like we obviously in America, like obviously our hygiene practices must be the best. When you like go to other in Italy, like the first thing they say about Americans is that we're gross. You know?
Well, they say we're gross because we're fat.
No, they also say we're gross because we go around in flip-flops with sweaty feet and you can smell them from like across the train.
Don't you talk about my shoes.
That was you the other day, wasn't it?